Locations: Battlefield. Once the Witcher lifted the curse, the mist dissipated, and the spectres of the fallen vanished into the beyond. Vergen. Peasant militia units, knights without title or estate, and seasoned dwarven volunteers fought heroically side by side, forcing the Kaedweni veterans to pay for every inch of ground with their blood. Yet the hour of doom seemed nigh, the battle's outcome inevitable. That is, until Iorveth arrived with Scoia'tael reinforcements, just in time to turn the tide. Vergen won its independence with courage, steel, and the blood of the fallen. Kaedweni camp. The Kaedweni military camp greeted us from afar with the cacophony of sounds typical of such encampments. Officers' commands and sentries' shouts mixed with the growling of platoon leaders enlightening enlisted men as to their mothers' professions and why these ladies charged so little for their services. Veterans cursed, recruits sniveled, horse giggled, horses neighed, and dogs barked. The din was accompanied by a jumble of smells. The stench of several thousand men who would consider guard duty in the rain to be an adequate bath cannot be mistaken for any other, and this blended with the sense of boiling cabbage, foot wraps, and stables. Compared to the noxious odour the wind carried from the camp latrines on sunny days, the smell of the cairn's lair seemed like that of a flowering meadow. Hut on the cliff. There were many derelict settlements and farms in the area around Vergen. Some had survived in better shape than others. Characters. The Troll of Vergen. The final episode took place when both creatures arrived in Vergen to help defend it. The Kaedweni had occasion to learn that the phrase, "the monstrosities of war," can be more than a figure of speech. Elthon. This inhabitant of a hut near the quarry had one of the oddest jobs I have ever heard of, namely, Elthon served as a purchasing agent for a collector of harpy feathers, offering the Witcher generous sums for pinions and red tresses picked from the carcasses of harpies. As it turned out, Elthon was not buying feathers for a collector, but for himself. With a sackful of plumage Geralt supplied. He finally fulfilled his dream of transforming himself from an ugly duckling into a swan, or more precisely, a queen harpy. What did I say there, and why? Thorak. The local runemaster had been an important figure in the dwarven community of Vergen since time immemorial. At present the role was filled by Thorak, a dwarf who had taken up the legacy of his master Baltimore a few years earlier. Thorak ran his workshop impeccably, earning the respect and trust of his kin. He offered services of the highest quality, and like any ambitious artisan, was looking for a way to perfect his techniques and abilities. Only after he died at Geralt's hand was it revealed that Thorak had been behind the disappearance of his master Baltimore. Thus ends a story of envy that pushed even an honest dwarf to crime. Baltimore. Having spent some time in Vergen, I had heard much about the famous runesmith Master Baltimore, whom the local dwarves revered. Mastering the profession in question required practice over scores of years, and runes cast into weapons or tools supposedly grant them unusual properties. Almost the same. We did not meet Master Baltimore, however, as he had disappeared several years before the events described herein. Yet his handiwork was, and is still, reputed to be the pinnacle of the difficult art of forging runic signs. Either Baltimore really was paranoid, or he had a good reason to believe that his life was in danger. Thanks to some notes, Geralt ascertained that the runesmith's disappearance had been the work of his apprentice, envious of his teacher's secrets. The poisoning priest. Orkan, the priest from Prince Stennis' retinue, turned out to be directly responsible for the poisoning of Saskia. The clergyman apparently thought that a heavy dose of Thaumador would be more effective than prayer or excommunication. Unfortunately, because he was already dead, he could not answer for his deed. Vanhemar. Shilard Fitz-Oesterlen's personal sorcerer had only just made Geralt's acquaintance when he died at the witch's hands. Assire var Anahid. The sorceress came from Nilfgaard, or more precisely from Vicovaro, a distinction of extreme importance to the Highborn of the Empire, as I can attest from personal experience. That is because the term Nilfgaardian is reserved for native residents of the Empire's capital and its immediate vicinity. Assire var Anahid was nothing like the stereotypical Nilfgaardian sorceresses, unkempt things in unfashionable attire. On the contrary, she wore well-cut dresses and underlined her beauty with just the right touch of makeup, following the example of our sorceresses in the north. As momentous events played out in Lochmuin, Assire was murdered, probably by her own countrymen, possibly on order of the Emperor himself. The hazy circumstances surrounding her death gave rise to much speculation in Nilfgaard, fueling propaganda and political conflicts for some time to come. Triss Merigold. In Eldon, the search for Triss ended with the discovery of a bitter truth. Transformed into a nephrite figurine, she had ironically been in the possession of an oblivious Geralt for a time, and he had brought her straight to the Nilfgaardian camp. The Nilfgaardian emissary envisioned a special part for her in Lochmuin. Dandelion. Geralt and Iorveth headed for Lochmuin to meet their destiny, yet I decided to stay in Vergen a bit longer. I had more than enough material for new ballads, therefore I fought the urge to reach Lochmuin in time to witness the important events transpiring there. Thus, I know the rest of the story only from the accounts of others, yet I present it here as faithfully as possible. Anything omitted was surely not worth a mention in the first place. Vernon Roche. Vernon's help was as unexpected as it was invaluable. Even though Geralt stood with his opponents, Roche helped the Witcher, saving him from certain death. Furthermore, he did so out of kindness, thus proving that tales of his carelessness are somewhat exaggerated. Roche not only provided him with valuable information, but also risked his neck, helping him to leave Hensel's camp safely. Though Geralt had not sided with him fully earlier, Vernon trusted that the Witcher would be able to get to Foltest's murderer. Though that meeting was to be their last, at least in this story, Geralt never forgot the debt he owed to the Blue Stripes captain, Shilard Fitz-Oesterlen. The meeting with Shilard during Geralt's visit to the camp was not as friendly as the previous ones. It turned out that Shilard's gambit saw the Witcher as a pawn blocking the way to Triss Merigold. Shilard intended to use her in his political intrigues, and since Geralt had become an inconvenience, the envoy ordered him killed without a second thought. Then he headed for Lochmuin. Kingslayer. The magic sent Geralt a vision and gave us another bit of information. Letho had been in the area earlier and had ordered his accomplices to assassinate King Hensel. The Kingslayers had been working with Síle de Tansarville, but just as with Iorveth, their paths had diverged. Whatever finale would conclude this story, Letho claimed it would take place in Lochmuin. Iorveth. When Iorveth disappeared after the poisoning of Saskia, nobody expected to see him again. Some whispered he had been behind the poisoning, or that he had simply lost the will to fight. Nobody believed his talk of elven archers. Time would show what his promises were worth. The Scoia'tael doubtless had a sense of dramatic timing. His reinforcements could not have come at a more appropriate moment, and the emotion felt by all the defenders, including yours truly, was pure euphoria. Iorveth proved himself a person who does not waste words or abandon allies in need. If I had had any doubts about him, they dissipated together with the smoke which hung over Vergen. Iorveth was determined to save Saskia and settle the score with the sorceress. He and Geralt set out to Lochmuin to close the final chapter of this story. Zoltan Chivay. Zoltan won great renown during the defense of Vergen, closing the gate and stopping King Hensel's retreat nearly single-handedly. Thus he sealed the victory over the Kaedweni army that memorable day. Just as I did, Zoltan decided to remain in Vergen when Geralt and Iorveth chose to travel to Lochmuin to complete the final chapter of this story. There was still much to do in the newly independent Pontar Valley, and the dwarf turned out to be the right sort to take up some of the responsibilities. Síle de Tansarville. The shocking truth about Síle de Tansarville and the more important pieces of the puzzle concerning her role in the events in the north would not be fully revealed for some time, but Geralt chanced upon the first clue of her complicity by pure coincidence. One of the dreams stolen by the Harpies pointed to her as one who had commissioned the assassinations of the king of Adda and Demavend. Serrit. Serrit was probably one of the witches Roche had mentioned. He and Auckes trying to cover Letho's escape when Síle located their hideout. Though both died in the end, they completed the task, buying the last Kingslayer time to flee. Philippa Eilhart. Philippa tricked everyone, not only casting a charm on Saskia under the guise of aid, but also using Geralt and Iorveth in her machinations. On the one hand, it was inevitable. On the other, it left a bitter aftertaste, giving rise to the thought that sorceresses' misdeeds are responsible for the widespread mistrust towards their profession, and perhaps even towards the female gender. Eilhart abducted Saskia and left for Lochmuin. Back then, we did not know what she was planning. Saskia. Once Geralt discovered the whole truth about Saskia, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Saskia, a hybrid dragon, could assume any form she desired, even that of a human. Saskia had achieved a great victory, adding another chapter to her legend. There was, however, something baffling about the speed with which she set off for Lochmuin, where she hoped to convince the rest of the North to recognize the Pontar Valley as an independent state. Saskia was no longer her own mistress. He or she who could command the dragons stood to attain great power indeed. Prince Stennis. When he got involved in the conspiracy against Saskia, the young prince forgot that crowned heads fall as easily off as those of serfs. He was found guilty as an accessory to the assassination attempt and paid for it with his life. Dethmold. During the Battle of Vergen, Dethmold aided the attackers, using his magic to destroy fortifications and key defensive positions. It is clear that had they been deprived of his talents, the Kaedwenis would not have penetrated so far. Though Henselt was bad because of his royal lineage, Dethmold met a fate appropriate for a tyrant's faithful and hated servant. The sorcerer's life ended in the central square of Vergen, a town he had hoped to seize and bring to its knees. Say it again here, I don't like Dethmold, not one bit. But I think he's no more a criminal of war than any one of the others. Sabrina Glevissig. The sorceress Sabrina Glevissig was from Auckes, the capital of Kaedweni, and had been King Henselt's advisor. The reader, however, should not be deceived by the term. This true daughter of the Kaedweni wilderness was famous for her determination and temperament. There was no exaggeration to the rumors that on many occasions she would interrupt the king, thumping a fist on the table and yelling that he should shut up and listen. And the king would indeed shut up and listen. Sabrina Glevissig's predatory nature was paired with an equally predatory beauty, which she emphasized through appropriately chosen attire. Add to that the power she commanded as a sorceress, and it should become clear to what she owed her strong position not only in Kaedweni, but also beyond its borders. This position could not protect her from the king's wrath, however, and when she failed Henselt one time too many, the sorceress ended up at the stake, where her life ended. Glossary. Other. Wild Hunt. The poem Song of the Hunt is a book as rare as a hen's teeth, and a pile of rubbish about the hunt at the same time. Experts on the subject are willing to kill for that item, but fortunately there are not many of them. The multi-layered narration sends the reader into the world of the author's rich imagination, where each verse equals another interpretation. Truth mingles with fantasy in that work, but there is nothing of interest there for one researching the hunt. What is the Wild Hunt in reality? A cavalcade of riders from a world dominated by elves, riders able to travel between different dimensions. The so-called race are these elven warriors' spiritual emanations. They serve a powerful race and even more powerful individuals whose knowledge of magic and skill in this domain far exceeded those of the human and elven mages of our world.